conference.
Right.
Will's going to start.
Good evening. We're going to ask you if you could take your seats. We're going to try to start a clock down to get started on time. Great. All right, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Well, welcome to Civicon in Santa Rosa County. Give yourself a big hand. I'm Will Dunaway, and I'm the chairman of the Civicon board, and I'm delighted to be here. I normally stand like here at a podium looking this way, so having the mic and standing and looking at you this way is a little bit different. But thank you for having us over here tonight. We're very excited to be able to share with Santa Rosa County the results of the Quality of Life Survey. But before I introduce our guest speaker to talk to you about that, I want to just remind you about what Civicon is. Civicon is a partnership between the Pensacola News Journal and the Studer Community Institute. Our mission is to engage with civic conversations to raise the civic IQ to make our area a better place to live, work, and grow businesses and families. And we believe we've been doing that by bringing in great speakers who talk to us about best practices, how things like road diets work, how good planning is accomplished. Great topics. Our recent topic talked about affordable housing and how we can work in that area. And our executive director here, Terry Horn, please stand up. So Terry leads, thank you. Terry leads our group. We started really as a small group of volunteers. As many of you know, I'm a land use attorney. I heard that Quint had talked to a friend of mine, Christian Wagley, who many of you know, and he had said, "Hey, Christian, you've been in urban planning. You've been in towns to make places walkable, bikeable, great places to live. Help us identify some people and let's bring them in." Well, I saw Quint later that afternoon and said, "Hey, I'm a land use planner. I want to get involved in that." He goes, "There's a meeting this afternoon at 3:30. That was 5 years ago, and we've been meeting every Monday at 3:30 since. So I'm very, very grateful to Quint for having the vision to start and think about bringing in people, growing Civicon, and I'm very, very grateful for he and Rishi's financial contributions that make it all possible. And that is what Quint and Rishi have been about. They've been about helping to invest in our community and making us all better for it by showing how when we have good projects, that breeds more investment. So again, it's my privilege to introduce to you tonight our guest speaker, Quint Studer.
Well, thank you. There we go. Sometimes they say, you know, how do you have two meetings? You have a resentment and a cup of coffee. And that's how this thing came about. I was frustrated. I was frustrated in Escambia County, the city of Pensacola particularly. Is this on? I'm hearing impaired, so I never know. Can you hear me in the back? If you don't, let me know, because, again, I don't hear my own. It's just I'm deaf on this side, hear a little bit on this side. I was frustrated because it seemed like things shouldn't be this hard. You know, it shouldn't be this hard to build a brand new YMCA. It shouldn't be this hard to do certain things. And, you know, it just seemed like it was so hard. You know, it took 6 years after a vote to get a stadium built, which has turned out to be pretty good. It just took a long time to do things, and I understand there'll be always people against it. You know, when I wrote a book called Building a Vibrant Community, and when cities call me, I'll talk to them and I'll say, what would you like to accomplish? And they said, well, we'd like to get everyone on the same page. And I say, that'll never happen. That will never happen. And that's why this community building is so hard. You know, tomorrow I'm going to be flying out to the Medical University of South Carolina to be with them for the next couple of days. And most of my work is healthcare. And you go into a hospital or a big system, I'll be at Shands here in a couple of weeks, you have a CEO, and the CEO sort of says, here's our goals. And then most people he can align because they work for him. They have certain metrics, and so on. Now, it doesn't mean it's easy, but it's easier. You get to a community, it's just always going to have different thoughts, different beliefs. In fact, in Pensacola, I actually hired a poll company early on. I've always done that quite a bit to see how do people really feel, and I'll talk about this. And we had a poll in about 2006 or 7, right when the referendum was coming for Community Maritime Park. And one of the things the pollster did, Bruce Barcelo was his name, if everybody, I always give names for validity and reliability. So they asked a question, and the question was a question that is usually a yes. Like, you've just been given a lot of money. How would you feel? And most people would say, I'd feel pretty good. But there's going to be a group that's going to say, am I going to have to pay taxes on this money? And what he found out in the city of Pensacola, because we did the city of Pensacola, was about 30% to 32% of the people answered a question that should be yes as a no. So they actually can see how many people are going to probably lean. You know, there's those that will just say yes, those that will say, I'm leaning that way, and there will be people that are just start off saying no. So he looks at that, because those are the people that you probably won't move. There's just certain people you just won't move. Now, it was his comment. I've done it to every city I've ever been in. I know this is the county, because it fits almost everyone. There's a certain group of people that if you were, let's say Milton, let's use Milton as an example, just because I think I'm in Milton, right? Okay, let's use that at Milton as an example. And God was doing a whole big deal. You know, God was deciding to put heaven somewhere. Remember when Amazon had all these cities bidding for Amazon? And he just announced that he's really tired of where heaven is, and he's going to find another city to put it in. And what we came up with in Pensacola, and I don't think it's any different here, we said, if God picked Pensacola to put heaven downtown, 30% of the people would be upset a gated community had come down there. So we just got to realize that with this process. So what happened is I was frustrated with how hard things were. And these weren't wild things. These were like, let's make it safer for a bike. Let's make it more walkable. Stuff I saw, I travel all the time. And in 2005, and I'm giving you a lot more detail than normal, in 2005, I got a call from Jim Clifton, the chairman of the board of the Gallup Company, because he noticed that my company at the time, which I've sold, the Studer Group, worked with hospitals, and they measure hospitals. And what they found out was hospitals that we worked with outperformed those that we didn't work with. So Gallup's into learning things. So he had me fly to Washington, D.C., and then Omaha, both of their locations, and he was asking me about what we do for hospitals. And of course, you always want to get to know someone. So I just started asking him about Gallup and the history of Gallup, and they're so proud of their heritage and what they've helped create. And he said he's very excited because they just did the largest study ever on economic development. Why do some cities thrive and some cities don't? And there was a white paper called Soul of the City. So I asked him if I could have a copy of that white paper. And what it showed is what makes cities and what doesn't. And at one time, everyone just thought, well, it's location. It's location. People even say to me, well, Pensacola's got a great advantage because they got those white beaches. I said, and downtown sucked when it had those white beaches, too. So it's not just white beaches. It's got to be more than that. Some people think it's weather. Have you ever been to Portland, Maine? It is great. And Bangor's right close. It's not near anything like Portland. So what makes or what breaks some of these communities? And it was a few things. Number one is they really paid a lot of attention to the businesses that got revenue from outside their area, because those are the most valuable companies, because they could move anywhere. They don't have to be here because their customers aren't here. So are we doing everything we can to keep them? In fact, one of the things he said, and not to put anybody on the spot, he said just go up to your elected officials or community leaders and ask them what are the 10 companies that take their revenue from outside the community, and when was the last time you met with them? Because somebody's meeting with them because they can move easily. Some companies can't move because all their customers are local. The next thing he said, and these aren't in any specific order, is what are you doing to help startups? Because most cities got lucky with a startup. Microsoft was a startup at one time. Dell was a startup. Apple was a startup. Things were startups. In fact, Pensacola got quite lucky because almost at the same time, App River and Studer Group both came out of and were startups. And at one time, they both employed and still do a lot of people. So they got lucky, but you gotta love them, because these people will go where they can get support. So what are you doing for startups and your small businesses? Because really 95 to 98% of all jobs are still developed by local small businesses. The big places get a lot of attention, but the small businesses are the ones that grow and employ people, and they're the least likely to move because they grew up in that community. You know, people ask me, well, when you started your company, you started in Gulf Breeze, you know, you could have moved anywhere. You're not from here. Why did you stay? Well, we stayed because of our youngest son. We had moved quite a bit when our son was young, and he went to the 4th grade at Oriole Beach, and because that was his 3rd school already, because we had moved for career-wise, he started twirling his hair and had a big bald spot on his head from being so anxious and so nervous. So my wife and I both said, we can't leave him. We can't move to another place because we don't want to move him to another school. In fact, our offices were real close to the elementary school, so he could walk there after work, because we only had 3 employees, 500-square-foot building at Gulf Breeze United Methodist Church. You know, Nightingale Lane was our first office. The next thing he said was, you've got to have, if you want to keep young people, you got to have vibrancy, because it's really all about talent. If you walk out of here with just one message, whoever has the talent wins, because today it's all about talent. Land's important, incentives are nice, but you can ask your economic development people, one of the things they're going to ask about is, can we hire the talent here? Can we get the talent in our organization? So that hit me in 2005 and 6, and that's what started my journey of looking and saying, what can we do better here? I went to Asheville, I went to Greenville, I went to all these cities trying to say, what is it? And I wrote a book called Building a Vibrant Community a couple of years ago. But what happened is I started having people come to my house, small roundtables, and we read the book in 2010 called The Coming Jobs War by Jim Clifton. And he talked about you got to build a community's IQ, because what you're trying to do might not be as normal as what they used to, because we used to build places for cars, not for people. We used to offer big incentives, and those sometimes just don't work. And what are we doing to build the small businesses? So we were sitting around the table, and somebody said, well, we've got to, this is great information, but too bad more people can't get this, because you want to create the critical mass. Anytime you want to move anything, it comes down to what's your burning platform. My burning platform, if you don't know what it is kids have to be ready for kindergarten. That's my #1 burning platform right now. No matter where I go to speak, I talk about burning platform as kids got to be ready for kindergarten. Because if a child's not ready for kindergarten, there's likely of them graduating from high school goes way down. If a girl doesn't graduate from high school, 70% will have a baby by they're 18. 60% of boys will be in jail at some time in their life. So if you look at our work, and if you're in Santa Rosa, let me tell you a place that's doing an unbelievable job with us right now. It's Santa Rosa Medical Center. Every mom that has a baby sees a video on how to build her baby's brain and walks out with a brain bag. So in Santa, we work with a number of hospitals around the country, and they're probably the best one we have right now as far as making sure and really buying into it. Of course, they do the same thing at the 3 hospitals in Escambia County. So we decided to do something called CivicCon, and I went to Christian Wagley, because I didn't know who these people. I'd never heard Donald Shoup, the parking guru, or Jeff Speck, the walking guru, or Emily Talon, the social equity guru out of University of Chicago, or Michael Pride. Michael Pride tells you how safe streets are, and they're very dependent on how wide they are. And I didn't know this. The average lane should be 10 feet. Every inch over 10 feet, people will go faster and faster and faster, and then what they do is they end up being unsafe. Now, any street in a city limit should be 10 feet, okay? Now, in Pensacola, Florida, we have some streets that are 54 feet wide. It's called 4 lanes and a crosswalk, and that's real dangerous to walk across a 54-foot wide. I have a rough time driving now, because every time I'm at a stop sign, I'm looking at how wide the lane is. You know what I mean? This stuff starts getting in you, and you start noticing these things. Or how dark is it? Chuck Marone. Wow, he's been here 3 times, his latest one. I hope you watch him. You know, you can all watch them. We get 10 to 15,000 people watching these on streams every time we do one. He talks about a strode. And he said there's streets, which are usually narrower, lower speed limit, sometimes trees or sidewalks and these things. Then there's highways, which are fast. Both are very safe, because some you're going slow, but some you're all going fast. Then there's something called stroads. It's not a street, not a highway. And I will tell you, if you go to Pensacola, we are the capital of stroads in the United States of America, because they're too wide and too fast and people speed. And, you know, as you know, I got hit and run on my bike this last year, so I mean, I can just tell you, it's crazy. Pedestrian right-of-ways. You know, in the Florida, if you're in a right-of-way, you're supposed to have a pedestrian supposed to have the right-of-way. Have any of you ever experienced this, which you're getting close to a crosswalk and a car sees you and speeds up? They almost want to beat you to the crosswalk. It's one of those things. So anyway, out of that, I said to Christian Wagley, you know who these people are. You have a blank check. You just go out and call them up and you hire them. And you tell them whatever they want, we'll bring them in. We can't say the 3rd Thursday of every month, because we want to work around their schedule. So if Jeff Speck, he can come here on a Monday, we do a Monday. If somebody says we can get here on a Wednesday, we do a Wednesday. We have the superstar of early brain development coming in June, and that's Dana Suskin, best-selling author of the 30 Million Words, and she'll be here on a Monday, because it sort of works for her, and her husband likes baseball, so he wanted to come when the Blue Wahoos were in town. And that's a Sunday game, then she's going to speak on Monday. So we started bringing these speakers in, but you know if anyone's going to show up. You don't know that. So our first speaker, all of a sudden, due to the great work of the Pensacola News Journal, we had 275 people sign up. We said, wow, maybe we'll stream this. And we had 5,000 people watch it on live stream, and today, for many of them, we'll go over that, so it's pretty cool. So back up before that. In 2008, I did a dashboard. I think dashboards are really important. What are the metrics for your community that impact quality of life? And we presented a dashboard. I still do for Santa Rosa County, too. We put in the paper every single year. And I also got a little frustrated. Has anybody ever been at a meeting where somebody gets up and acts like they're talking for everyone? Everyone feels this way. Elected officials say, my constituency, how many? I'm getting a lot of emails. Can you show us how many you've actually gotten? And there's these generalizations. And then the quality of life issue comes up. Even today, when I go to a community, and everybody feels that way. Everybody feels the quality of life's pretty good because they live there. They live there. And with the quality of life, what'll happen, I'll give you a Killeen, Texas. I was there, and the head of the chamber gets up and says, we're all about quality of life. The person in charge of the military operation there, it's a big military town, says we're all about quality of life. the superintendent of schools stood up and said, we're all about quality of life. Everybody's about quality of life. Then I said, well, then shouldn't we measure it? Because if something's really important to you, shouldn't you measure it? And that's sort of what we did. So I just got frustrated, and I asked somebody to find out who is the best company in the world. Is there such a thing as a quality of life measurement? And is there companies that do that? And there are. All the major measurement polling companies will do it. And he said, and I agree with him, that Mason-Dixon he thought was the best one for quality of life. So I think in 2008 we did the first quality of life survey in Escambia County in Santa Rosa. And I've learned a lot of things about it. If you like the answer to the one question, you consider it a valid and reliable survey. If you don't like the answer to that one question, you think it's an invalid and unreliable survey. It's sort of like if I hop on a scale and it's weighing me light, it's a good scale. and so it came out, and I will tell you our first one was not pretty. Only 26% of the people in Pensacola and Escambia County thought we were moving in the right direction. And some people didn't like that. It wasn't personal. It was just that. And now it's a little higher, but I will tell you we've slid backwards in Escambia and Santa Rosa, or Escambia and Pensacola. We got it up in the mid-60s, and now it's dropped into the mid-50s. So we went up, and now we're going down because people pay a lot of attention to this. So somebody asked me about a year ago, why don't you do Santa Rosa County? I said, okay, and if you're asking what the cost is, it's about $25,000. Now, some of you are going to see this and say, what a waste of money, you idiot. I could have told you this stuff for less than $25,000. But it's a valid, reliable survey. You'll see. They ask enough people and so on. So let me show you where we're at. It's a partnership, as Will said, between us and the News Journal. And Lisa would be here, the editor of the News Journal. Her sister had a serious health issue. Bleeding of the brain. She's been in a hospital, and Lisa's been there every step of the way. She went home, I think, today or yesterday, or is going home, because she's starting to show. Lisa's been with her in the rehab facility. Lisa, I bet, is probably watching this tonight if she could, but sometimes she can't, because she's doing all the toiletry and everything else for her sister right now. But she's a remarkable person. This is our last speaker, and if you want to, you can go online and watch his talk. There is no magic wand here. There is no one thing's going to solve the affordable housing crisis. One thing's going to solve crime. There's a multiple of techniques and tactics you have to decide is right for your city. I spend some time in Wisconsin. My wife and I, our grandkids are there. Most of our children are there. So we were there this week. It was a little chilly. Did get up to 37 one day, though. And but we were there, and he's working in the town that we were at, in Beloit and Milwaukee. And he's a Indiana University graduate. He's got a law degree from the University of Chicago, went on this not-for-profit board on how to help low-income people buy houses, and his passion got a hold of him. And he works for this company called Axe, and basically what they do is they help low-income people buy houses. Normally ones they're renting. The largest buyer of houses in the United States of America right now is private firms. They come in and they buy all these homes and they control the rent. And then that makes it real difficult for low-income people because they're even afraid to complain. Because if they complain, they might get evicted, so they're just quiet. So if you haven't seen his talk, you can see the likelihood of recommending was a 996. Net Promoter Score, which means 10s, 9s, was perfect. And it's really, just a great talk, a lot of great information. If you're looking at something like that for low-income people, but there's not one magic thing. We had Lotus from Charlotte come in, which helps people rent apartments, and that was more of a homeless area. In fact, in our survey in Pensacola and Escambia County, we do some non-standard questions, and we found out the biggest issue is not homelessness. It gets a lot of attention. The biggest issue is workforce housing right now, if you ask the general public what it is. So that's what this data is all about. We have Robert Young coming, talking about environmental strategies for coastal cities. So we try to hit what our quality of life and other things show. So we try to move. We were very fortunate. A couple of years ago, we grabbed race and started bringing in speakers on race relations. In fact, we do non-standard questions, and I have the Pensacola Young Professionals as our partner in this, rolling it out and so on. So that's coming at the Rex, but of course, everything is streamed. This is our superstar, Dana Suskin. She's the one that turned me on to Early Brain. We did our dashboard, and we saw that only 42% of the children in Escambia County are ready for kindergarten. And that means they're going to have a rough road in school. And our public school, did you ever hear this? That's our public school system. I don't think it is. I think it's our kids aren't ready for kindergarten. You know, I've traveled the country. The teachers in Walton County are no better than the teachers in Escambia County. I don't think the teachers in Santa Rosa County are better than teachers in Escambia County. Nor do I think the Escambia Counties are better than Santa Rosa County. I think these are all wonderful people giving their life to students. But so much of it is, what's your student body look like? If I'm 3 counties over and 80% of my kids are kindergarten ready, it's going to be a much easier teaching than if 58% of the kids are not. So I have researchers. We have 11 employees of my not-for-profit Studer Community Institute. We said, let's do some research on how impactful is kindergarten readiness on success. And economist John List from the University of Chicago weighed in. We brought Dana in. Dana told us about how many words they hear the first 3 years. And it's changed a lot of what we've done. We built early learning playgrounds. If you go to the Bodacious Brew on Main Avenue, you'll see this little playground because we want kids to learn. Now, sadly, more children are not hearing as many words as they used to. Does anybody know why children are not hearing as many words as they used to? It's called the phone. It's called the phone. And I'm so nuts on this, I'm like crazy. When people are pushing their child in a stroller and it's facing out, I want to go turn it. So somebody's talking to them. So anyway, that's some things we're doing. We have a new magazine. We have some of them here and so on. So now let's talk about why you're here. Now let me give you right off the bat, we wish we could have rolled this out sooner. Now and by the way, sometimes people say, well, Quint, you're probably skewing it. You're probably picking these questions because you're paying for it. Well, I'm going to allow anyone in here to pay for it then. if you would like that opportunity, okay? These are standard questions. I have nothing to do with the questions whatsoever. It was done in October. Now, don't fall in the trap of thinking things have changed dramatically in October, but they could have. They could have. We normally think things have gotten better since it. I've never had anyone say it's gotten worse, but that is one of the challenges. This took a long time to roll out. And in the future, if you want to do it again, which it's up to you, we'll roll it out right away. Because the sooner you can roll it out to the data, the better. So a couple things that help communities reach their full potential. Number one is, I think, solid measurement, because I think it makes it objective measurement. I was in Fort Walton Beach, for example. They did quality of life survey, and it was pretty interesting because their survey data came out, and I could tell when people came to speak at the city council meetings, they had the data in mind, because they just couldn't, they had to at least go to the data, because the data sort of says that. I remember when I was president of Baptist Hospital, we had really good employee engagement data. Now, that didn't mean that everyone was happy, but it meant when somebody said, everyone's unhappy. You ever have anyone say that, everyone's unhappy? We used to get that in hospitals. Somebody said, all the physicians are unhappy. I said, no, they're not. They've never all agreed on anything in their entire life. So the reality is, what we go through is, it's not, the generalities happen, but the more specific we can get, the better. So we want measurement. And then you can create your own burning platform. What do you want to address? In Stillwater, Oklahoma, they decided to go after traffic first. In Lafayette, Louisiana, they decided to go after a vibrant downtown because they want to keep their young talent there. In Pensacola, we're going after, right now, that early brain stuff, because we think that's the metric. If we don't move the metric long term, we'll probably won't really be that sustainable, because it's all about talent. This could be the critical mass. And some of your questions, I'm not an expert. Some of you ask me, what's going to happen with this material? It's up to you. It's up to you. It's not up to me. Who's going to address it? Who's going to attack it, grab it? It's really up to what you do with it. You might do nothing with it. You might do a lot with it. Most of the cities that we work with pay for it themselves. It's not being paid for them. And it's interesting because they do a lot with it because they paid for it. Because now it's their data and they want to do something and so on. We always have to move through turbulence. And what I bring up by that is every time we're moving forward in any type of community, there's going to be pushback. Ed, you were with me at some of the pushback. There's going to be pushback. And one of the things I love to do is talk about Chuck Yeager. Anybody ever hear of Chuck Yeager? Chuck Yeager broke the sound barrier. If you want to just go on and watch the movie Right Stuff and just put Chuck Yeager, there's about a 3.5 minute where he's breaking the sound barrier, and everybody else pulled the throttle back with turbulence, and he kept it going. And sometimes in any community, you've got to keep the throttle down because you get tired and you want to pull it back when you get pushed back. So, a couple things to be careful of. Sometimes people just get denial. You know, you've just asked unhappy people, that's what you've done here. There's rationalization. You know, that's why it's the homeless. It's the homeless, even though it can't be to that extent. But we find up with why something is the way it is. Could be, could not be. There's blame, blaming somebody else. And there's also jumping to conclusions too quickly. The other thing, this isn't a catch you. This isn't a got you. Because the reason we created Civicon was to have civic conversations. So it's not I told you so. And this is just a baseline. And your baseline's pretty good. Most cities would love some of your baseline things. And some of yours, you're not going to like all that much. So there's some really, really good, and there's some not so good. You ever hear this is a nice community, though, because sometimes we get community results and they're not near as good as yours. And we call it, you got to find the pony. And what I mean by that is there's a experiment, and then they're trying to see how long somebody can stay in a room that smells really bad. So they put a bunch of horse manure in a room. And they bring in the first person, and they put him in that room, and in a matter of seconds, he's banging on the door. Let me out, let me out. They open it up, and this person's, woo, whoa, whoa. Second person goes in, same thing, bangs on the door. Immediately they open it up, he goes, woo. Next person goes in, and he's not banging on the door and not coming out. They're worried something happened to him. They open the door, and there he is throwing horse manure all over. He says, there's got to be a pony in here somewhere. Sometimes we got to find the pony when it comes to statistics. So it was commissioned by my wife and I. The survey creates the opportunity for the community to dialogue, to outreach, to have information, to share. Doesn't mean you have to. It's up to you. It's up to you how you use it. The objective survey is to gain an understanding of the public's awareness and attitude on a number of topics chosen by Mason-Dixon as the key quality of life indicators. So if you wonder, like, who picks these, it's Mason-Dixon. Now, next year, if you do this again, and we're willing to fund it if you feel it's got value this year, you can pick some non-standard questions. We'd rather have you pick them than us. So over the years, we've done some non-standard questions, and here's some. When we're getting ready for Community Maritime Park, that whole big fight through there, one of the questions was, how important is waterfront development to you? Because some people on the north end of the county said, why should we be doing and spending money on that waterfront? How's that going to help us? Almost 70 to 80% of the people said it's real important to everybody. It's important to us too. The other questions we asked some time back, about 2 years ago, is, are you willing to pay a little bit extra on your taxes to help kids get ready for kindergarten and get an education? And that led to the Escambia Children's Trust. The last 2 years, we've asked race questions about racism in the community. And we've gotten a lot of information, and we have a long way to go. Over 80% of the black people in Escambia County feels there's racism. 52% of the white people feel there's racism. So that's something in Escambia County which is a bigger issue than it is in Santa Rosa County just because of the population difference. But we picked non-standard questions that you could pick. I bet you if you had to do it again, you'd pick something maybe about roads, something about where they should be, something about maybe the courthouse at one time, and you probably did some polling then to find out the general population. So it was done there, and what they do is they call voters. So I do want you to know that's how they call voters. And basically they want to get the same, right amount of women, men, age, sex, and income. So they will keep calling. So if they are saying they're looking for people that make less than a certain dollar amount, and somebody makes more than that, they will just nicely hang up if they've already got enough of them, and they'll go to the next person. So this will probably be the most valid and objective survey you've ever had in Santa Rosa because it matches your county exactly as it is. And that's one of the reasons why we use a professional firm. So you can't read this, but all this will be available. One of the questions you had, everything will be available. The Pensacola News-Journal puts it online, so you'll be able to go in and dig and look at the data. Also, if any of you want the raw data, we can get that to you. You know, what the analysts all use. There's no secrets here. Everything out there you can see. We've done that for years because we think that's how you hope if everybody looks at the same objective data, they'll come close to the same agreement. I didn't say I'll agree. I said come close to the same agreement. So that'll show you that 48% of the people were male, and I won't do this all thing just for this one, 52% female. Your community, 27%, if you look at statistics of people in Santa Rosa County have a high school diploma, 28 have some college, 32 are college graduates, and 13 have a graduate degree. You have a very intelligent county. You have a very smart county when you look at something like that. Age-wise, you have an older county. Probably figured that one out too. And maybe that's one, just because of who's attracted to this county, or maybe because young people don't stick around as much. How many of you, out of curiosity, have grown children? Raise your hand. How many of you have grown children that don't live in Santa Rosa County? That's what I mean. Anyway, so you can see the Democratic, Republican, Independent race. They go through the race, what the race is, according to statistics. They go through the income. You have 8% of your people earn less than $25,000, 18% between 25 and 39, 17% between 40 and 74, 41% 75 plus, and then you have some refuse to say. Then you have employment, length of residence, and child. So that's pretty specific when you're going to look at data. Now, one of the questions is, do you think Santa Rosa County, do you think that things Santa Rosa County are heading on the right track or on the wrong track? And it's worded more better than I just said it on the survey. 49% of the people think you're on the right track. That, remember where we started in Escambia County. In fact, it's only at 55 right now. Escambia County is only at 55, 56, Kevin, something like that. 37% say wrong track, and 14% are unsure. Now, if I was a consultant, which I don't want to be, if you can get those into the 60s, you're cooking. So the question is, you can try to move those wrong track people a lot, but you're better off keeping the ones with you and getting those not sure, giving them a reason to move over. And then hoping you can get 4 or 5% of that wrong track. I do this a lot for cities. I'm just saying, if I had to give you a grade, it'd be like a C+ in right track stuff, but you're real close to an A. You got to move that 14 to 15% over. So that's right track, wrong track. Most important issues. Now, this does not mean they think it's bad, because you're going to see later on, people here are proud of the education systems in Santa Rosa County. So when you see this, it just means it's that important to them. It doesn't mean that it's something that's wrong or good or bad, so just listen to it. Here's what their issue is. Number one is 20% education is really vital to them. So to continue to build and support education as much as you can. Taxes. I was sort of surprised traffic and road was only 10%. Because if you read the paper, I would think that's all that goes on here is traffic and roads and development. You know, I mean, you know what I'm saying? I mean, because those are hot issues. Those are hot issues, or a thing gets a lot of attention, like in this Pensacola, they'll go to tear down an old house for a while, and it just became, you know, the story of stories of stories. So when you look at that, so that sort of says it's really spread. Now, also, sometimes you wish there was a bigger issue. So in Lafayette, they really wanted to focus on their downtown, some people, but it wasn't an issue. However, what was an issue later on, you'll see for them, was keeping young talent home. So all of a sudden, downtown, then, we connect the dots. So this is your baseline. So it might mean sometimes connecting the dots. Here's what I've learned. You're either going to have, if you have good data, but people don't see it that way, then it's how do you message the good data. If you don't have good data, it's how do you get good data. So sometimes I'll be in a community, and they'll say, oh, but we're so much better than that. Well, then it's a messaging issue. So in Lafayette Parish in Louisiana, they said, you know, our school districts are better than the perception. Well, then there was a messaging issue. And they've really gone out of the way. If you go online and look at Vibrant Lafayette, you'll see that they're really focusing on letting people know they have a lot of bright spots in their schools. It takes 2 or 3 years sometimes for the good news to really get where you get that critical mass. Rating economic conditions, you can see you're pretty much even Steven. If you look at this, it's not like one group feels so much better than the other group. So it's sort of the people that make less than 75 and the people that make more than 75 see things the same way. Age-wise, 54 to 58, under 50, over 50, male, female. So you don't have any big separation between people that make more money than less money, male versus female. They pretty much are seeing in many of these quality of life questions the same. Are you concerned about your security in the future, your own jobs, anyone close family members? This is one of the best results we've ever seen. 61% of the people are not concerned. I was going over the survey with some people Friday for their community. It was flipped the other way. And what's really nice about that, if people are not concerned, that means they're spending money. That means they're willing to invest. If you got 61% of your people that are concerned, then those are the people that are going to not spend money. This is probably one of the, I think it might be the best, I don't know, Claire, you're the expert on all this, but it's one of the very, very best I've seen for people feeling good about job security in Santa Rosa County. How would you rate the economic conditions? 57% say it's positive here. Again, that's a positive number. Remember, you're not going to have these giant, it's like an election, a 53 to 47 is a landslide, isn't it? So you're going to have these. So if you look at this, 57% feel real positive, which correlates into 5 years from now, do you think the economy in Santa Rosa County will be better off, worse off, or about the same as it is today? Now, if you look at this, 37% say it's going to be better. Remember, and that's good because they're already positive. So you're already taking a positive and people feel better. 34% say the same, and only 22% say it's worse. So I'm giving you a lot of good stuff because there is some not so good coming up. But anyway, I'm trying to, build my emotional bank account with you a little bit here. This is another good one. This is another good one. Quality of life factors. So now these are the things that Mason-Dixon, and working with cities all over the world, feel these are the most important things. So they ask you to rank it excellent, good, fair, or poor. And I'm going to start with the most positives. Public safety and fighting crime, you're very positive. And if there's one thing you want to be positive, it's this one. Because if you don't have people feeling safe, it's over. And I will say, again, Claire's the expert, this is one of the highest numbers we've seen in counties. So you should feel really, really good that people feel safe in Santa Rosa County. Availability of quality health care. People feel good about what's available, whether it be in Santa Rosa or Escambia. It's close by quality health care. Hopefully they also include the Children's Hospital, too, in that one, because that was a big thing that my wife and I have gotten involved in because we thought that was important. Public education, your people feel good about public education. This is one of the higher numbers that we've seen. Across the country, people aren't too excited about public education in general. You're one of the higher ones, and you should feel really good about that. Welcoming people of diverse ethnicity. You're at 55% there. Availability of parks and rec playgrounds. This is really important, because not you, but everybody thinks the way to solve every issue is build another playground or another park. Okay, we have so many parks in Pensacola. We have 68 parks or something like that in Pensacola. I'd like to turn some of them into housing, but it wouldn't go over well, I don't think. But you should feel good about your parks, your recreation, and so on. So you have a lot to feel good about. Job opportunities in your field, 52%. So these are the things that people feel pretty good about. And remember, that should be a little high because they're working here, they're living here, so that shouldn't be a big shock. There's probably nothing here that might shock you completely, but there are probably to what extent does it. And I just think when I saw this, I just said, this is unbelievable. This is the best safety rating I've seen. And if there was only one number that I would want, it's safety. The city I talked to on Friday, they were almost flipped. High 60 to 70% of the people thought crime was the worst, that was the negative factor. Now, they told me, well, but it's not true. They're watching all this news. That's the problem. Okay, but you still got to then message it. You still got to figure it out, because if that's my perception, it's going to stop me from moving there. If that's my perception, it's going to keep me from staying there. So these are the net positive factors. Negative ratings, and this doesn't surprise you in a county like this, public transportation. I mean, it'd be really hard. I mean, public transportation is hard in big urban environments, so this shouldn't surprise you. You might say, why'd they ask that question? Because these are all standard questions that they ask every single community. Getting from one place to another place, 78% of the people. Anybody disagree with that one here in Santa Rosa County? So that's an area that people struggle with, and that's why Stillwater focused on that one. Cultural opportunities come into play here a little bit more, because cultural opportunities are going to come into play, particularly when it comes to young people. Because what you're going to find is some things on young people. Vibrant nightlife, restaurants, and clubs. Again, more on the negative side than the positive side. Shared vision for job growth, availability of affordable housing, and effective elected leaders. Now, the challenge here is in Escambia County, we could ask county commission, city council here, just couldn't do that. In fact, even Mason-Dixon said it'd be almost impossible to do that in Santa Rosa County because of all the cities, the whole complexity of it. But that's where it's at, and I don't know which ones. Now, with anything like this, it just takes it, and this will not give you the answer. This is sort of like health care. You know, if you get a test, it can indicate something, but then you've got to go dig a little deeper. So on some of these, you can dig a little deeper. Now, familiarity with the vision statement. Economic development generates investment, wealth, tax base, and jobs, which many community benefits are created. I'm familiar with the vision and plan for economic development in Santa Rosa County. You're at 67% say they have some familiarity with the plan, which is very positive once again, because that's not an easy thing to communicate out. With the vision of community development, generates solutions to problems like housing, education, transportation, neighborhood renewal, making the community a better place to live and work. I'm familiar with the vision plans for the community development in Santa Rosa County. That's a little less on familiarity. They have more familiarity with the economic development, but and sometimes that's just something that messaging, and it's really hard because you can't count on just a newspaper anymore or a radio or a TV. What we've done in Lafayette, Louisiana, is we've taken the top 20 employers and we added up how many employees they had, and they're starting to use their employee newsletters to communicate good stuff about the parish because they represent a lot of employees. And these CEOs are well trusted, they're good people. Lafayette General Hospital has 6,000 employees. Patrick Gandy can send something out and say, do you know our schools are doing this? Do you know this is happening? Matthew Stull, who runs a jewelry wholesale, started out, great story, started out selling jewelry out of the trunk of his car. Now he's the biggest wholesaler of jewelry in the United States of America. Talk to any jeweler, and you mention Matthew Stull, it's like mentioning Bruce Springsteen to a music fan. Now he's worth $7.4 billion, and he's still in Lafayette. And he's the one that paid for some of these stuff. So what I'm saying is, it's pretty neat when you get this, because you've got to come up with creative ways to communicate today. Because you just can't go the old way of putting in the newspaper, put on the radio. Not that those aren't important, but it's got to be a whole bunch of different messaging. So now please rate Santa Rosa as a place to live, following types of people. Families love this place, 77% are positive. I know, I lived in Santa Rosa County when I first came to Pensacola. I was president of Baptist Hospital. I looked online and I noticed most of the executives lived in Gulf Breeze. Gee, I wonder why they live in Gulf Breeze. And then I looked up the school district and we had 2 kids, and guess where I decided to live? In Gulf Breeze. What a great advantage for you. What a great advantage. People like you, retirees, whoa, they're pumped. Young people, young single people, you get a little on the flip side here. If I got a kid, it's a good place. If I don't have a kid, it might not be a very good place. New businesses, entrepreneurs are sort of split. Racial and ethnic minorities, you can see they're sort of not, they're pretty positive actually compared to some. Could probably always be better. Immigrants from other countries. Here's, I think, if I was here, the biggest concern I would have is recent college grads looking for jobs. Because remember today, people pick a, I don't know if your generation, my generation was like this. I was a teacher. And the reason I moved to Janesville, Wisconsin is because they offered me a teaching job. If Wisconsin Rapids would have offered me a teaching job, I'd be living in Wisconsin Rapids. My dad grew up in Sedalia, Missouri. He ended up working at a General Motors plant in Chicago. You know why he ended up working at a General Motors plant in Chicago? Because there was a job that he could work in Chicago. Today, Generation Z, they look for a place to live, then they look for a job. So how do you create that right place for young people? How do you create that vibrant place for young people? How do you create that place for cultural outlets for young people? Again, that's when our burning platform in Pensacola, if you look after the referendum passed and you look at WAR, they interviewed me and they said, wow, you won the referendum. What would you like to tell our viewers? And my message was, call your children and tell them they can come back home now. That's the burning platform for many communities. Because if you look long term, how do we get the young people here? So doing this in Hot Springs, Arkansas, if you look at their community, it's growing a little bit, but if you look at their age, it's getting much older. So these are things you can look at, and you can look at this data. And you're all going to have, all these slides are available. So you're going to have all this material that's available. My only question is, I really ask you not to play got you, not to say see, because then I won't pay for it again. Because this is not being utilized the right way. It's utilized to be helpful. It's utilized to create civic conversations. And I really would ask you to be really higher ground adults as we move through this whole process. So here's what you should feel great about. Now, I know you like being in first here in Santa Rosa County, and you're not in first, you're in second. The highest I've ever seen is 83%, and you're at 81%. So the overall question they ask, with all the stuff going on, how would you rate the overall quality of people in Santa Rosa County? Now, you know when you break down the data, it's going to have the younger people don't feel near as good as the people with families and the retirees. But you should feel really good. I don't know if you saw the paper today on the front page. It talked about people in Santa Rosa County should feel pretty good. Now, you're probably used to reading all these positive headlines in the paper. But anyway, that's really positive because, you know, a lot of times you don't hear the positive stuff because the media's got a lot of pressure on them to report on more of the negative stuff. Why do people report? You ever know why the media pushes the negative stuff? Because that's what people go to the website for. People go to website for. There's actually some cities, gosh, here, Lisa's not here and think I'm saying here. There's actually some cities now that are actually funding different messaging for them if they're not happy. Now, I'm happy. The News Journal, I think, is superb. They do a lot of great local coverage, and as you can tell, I wouldn't partner with them if I didn't think so. Over the next 5 years, do you think the quality of life in Santa Rosa County will improve, deteriorate, or stay about the same? Now remember, it's already highly rated. 35% are still optimistic it's even going to get better. Man, I'd use that optimism. 45% will stay the same. If you're 81% and you're staying the same, that's not the worst thing in the world. That means you're holding that high rating. 20% say it'll get worse. So they take the 20% and they sort of say reasons why you think it'll get worse, and it's basically poor schools or poor economy. So if they leave here, it's going to be something with the schools or something with the job or the economy. Remember, that's only the 20% that say that they deteriorate. Out-migration. How likely are you and an immediate family member to move from Santa Rosa County over the next 5 years? Very likely, somewhat likely, not very, not likely at all. 63% of the people are not leaving. Now, you can take the data, and Claire can help you. Raise your hand, Claire. Claire just came back from Iceland, so she's still thawing out. Now, why you would go to anyway. So basically, she knows this data with the Pensacola Young Professionals up and down. You can actually go in and know by age, know by some of the things where your people are, where they're at. But again, this is extremely positive. Now, the people that are leaving is the culture issue, the vibrance issue, the things to do we talked about. And then you go to economy. So as we wrap up and get ready for questions, and all this data is available, it's everything that we have you'll see. And I think that's really neat when you can do that. Positive things to feel great about. Man, if there's one thing, if you ask any city in the United States what's the one thing they would like to have the score the highest on, it would be safety. Because once you lose that, you've lost everything. And it's so hard to build up. Availability of quality health care, quality public education. And when I speak, I always talk about what's important to people in healthcare too, or to attract people to work in healthcare, of course. But if you're going to hit on three things, those are the top three. Safety, healthcare, and education. You can't get, that's the trifecta here of quality of life. Welcoming people of diverse ethnicity. Even though you don't have a lot of diversity here, people feel that you're welcoming to that. And again, you can have all the data. This is your data. I remember years ago rolling out real negative physician engagement survey results to a hospital, and they kept mad at me. I said, I didn't fill out the survey. These were your doctors that filled out this survey, not me. Availability of parks and playgrounds, you do well with that. And 80% of the people feel positive about the quality of life. So, what areas to focus on? Certainly, as we know, anybody that lives in this area. In fact, it was sort of cute. I said, Terry, when are we leaving? We're in downtown Pensacola. I said, when are we leaving to go to Milton? It's like 19 miles from where I am. He goes, well, 4:30. So when does this thing start? He said, well, you don't know about traffic. Anyway, so there wasn't much. We got here at 5, but availability of cultural opportunities. And that's going to hit you over and over again. That's the challenge, especially with young people. We are lucky that we have 2 counties next to each other, because we can really be great partners, and we are. So, for example, how does Santa Rosa County help Escambia County? People work in Escambia County and live in Santa Rosa County. And if there wasn't a Santa Rosa County, certain people wouldn't come to Escambia County possibly to live, because they want to, so you benefit. Now, Pensacola benefits you in a way. We're not that far away. And we do have a pretty cool downtown right now. We do have a lot of opportunities downtown. Not that you have to duplicate the opera, but there are certain things to do and to make magical here in Santa Rosa County. So we work well together. However, the people really wish you had stuff that was closer, that they didn't have to always go into Pensacola for some of those things, which is the vibrant nightlife. Availability of affordable housing is everywhere. It's just everywhere. There's no magic wand for these things. And when I say affordable housing, I also mean really what I'm considering workforce housing. That's the biggest challenge right now. Eduardo, where's Eduardo? You bought a home. When did you buy it? 2020, and it wasn't a real expensive home, was it? No, it was like you were looking for a home that was on the lower end. And you know what he told me a little while ago? It's doubled in value. Well, that meant he might not have been able to do that a year ago or 2 years ago. Somebody told me from Navarre the other day, came to the Blue Wahoo game, a realtor from Navarre. And I talked to him. I said, Rick, how's it going? He said, this is going to sound crazy, but I'm under a lot of stress. I've got 19 offers on one house. So, even that can be stressful because you're trying to satisfy people, and it's really, really hard right now. Increased familiarity with the vision, plans, and leadership. Maybe not as much economic development, but certainly your good work you're doing and want to do in community development. So, conclusion. 2 of the most important items of quality of life is safety and education. You scored tremendously well in both of them. The key with most cities and communities similar to the size of Santa Rosa County is creating the type of place where young people want to stay or come back to. So, that's the presentation, and now we're going to have Kevin Robinson, who's a report. What's your job now? Do you have a mic there? Kevin's done a great job. He's the one that wrote that real positive story you read today about Santa Rosa County, by the way.
And also, can we give Quinn a round of applause for that excellent presentation?
Let me go on this side. A lot of your questions I'm going to have to kick back for you guys to handle in the future, because it's really up to you. This is your county. These are your cities, and what you want to do.
And there were a lot of kind of specific questions about, what do we do? But I know you've worked with a lot of cities to make them become more vibrant. So I'll kind of just talk generally about, what would you advise a community, for certain things. But just kind of starting off, like you said, these results were some of the best you've seen in some categories. Is that typical for a first year, or is it because of this first year excitement, or is it Santa Rosa just doing that well?
No, it's not typical for the first year. In fact, it's a little unusual for the first year because usually people look at it and adjust a few things. So I would think, many of you feel it's a valid, reliable survey on some things. So no, it's very positive. But it doesn't surprise me. Doesn't surprise me. You have a good reputation for your school district. There's a lot of health care in the area. And I think when people think of Santa Rosa County, they just don't think within the certain mileage. They understand access to. And I think, you always have had a good quality life for people with children and for older people and retirees.
Was there anything in the survey that did surprise you? Anything that jumped out as you wouldn't have seen coming?
I thought the thing that surprised me the most was probably the scores with the young people, the college grads, not thinking this is a place for them, and the vibrancy. Things like something, you got to stay here so we're on the camera. I'm getting directed by Ron Stalkup here. Anyway, I think those were the biggest surprises. By the way, elected officials do crummy in every city right now. So I just want you to tell, this is unusual. I mean, you can pull up all of them. It's just, people aren't really happy with elected officials in general right now. So it's always just something that you can compare this area to other areas. It's one of the areas that people struggle with the most.
One of the things you mentioned that got me curious was you said Santa Rosa's was number 2, overall quality of life. Like, who was number 1, and are there lessons we could learn from them?
Who was 80? I think it was either Stillwater or Lafayette was 83. I think what they've got is a little different. Both of those have counties with one city, sort of like Escambia County. So it's easier to put your arms around something like that. It's easier to put your resources around something like that. They've also, and I don't know Santa Rosa County, they both have extremely strong chambers. Both Stillwater and Lafayette have very, very strong chambers who have really pulled what I would call wealth. And I mean that. Private money is what drives most of this, and elected officials can't. 1, election cycles, 2, public dollars. If you look at Pensacola, it was private dollars that did everything downtown. The city did put in some garbage cans. But it was basically, but that's basically most communities. Now they also did build the Community Maritime Park, which was huge. But normally today, when you see communities move, if you read James Fallow's book on our towns, where he studied 100 cities, it's when people with wealth have said, you know what, I want to make this a great place, and I'm willing to take some of my money and invest it in things that might not have a big return on investment. But the return on investment might not be dollars. It might be making it better for other people. You ask me, my favorite part of Pensacola is going to a Blue Wahoo game. Do you ever watch the kids run across the outfield? That's a pretty cool feeling to have. I spent some time recently with a woman named Diane Hendricks, who's pumped a ton of money into Beloit, Wisconsin, just because she lives there. Now, she owns ABC Supply Company around the country, but she sat there and said, I live here. She put in a hotel, a couple hotels, some restaurants, because she lives there. Lafayette, Stillwater, it's the same thing. It's when you can grab 5 or 6 pretty wealthy people that say, I can keep my money in the wealth management money market now, and I can do okay. In fact, I can do better, or I can pull it out and invest it in my own local community. The return on investment might not be dollars, but it's going to be me feeling really good that I've made a good place. In fact, one of my favorite times in Pensacola was Ron Jackson, Salt Marsh. We were sitting outside on a sidewalk, and his son-in-law and daughter are there, and he said to me, my son-in-law never wanted to live in Pensacola, but now they're moving here, and my first grandchild's going to be born here. Why? Because he came from Atlanta and said, I can live here. It's sense of place. Sense of place. And that's really, when I look at Lafayette or Odessa, the Off family, they made their money in pumps for oil riggings. And when they sold their company, they took that money and they invested it in downtown. because they wanted to have a great place to live. Most every community I go to, they call it Patriot investors. It's people that, again, everybody counts, but if somebody can really do something significant in the community, I know it sounds crazy, Janesville, Wisconsin has a river. A woman named Gilbertson spent $500,000 to build a pedestrian walkway across the river so people wouldn't have to go on streets. That might not seem like a big deal, but that changed the pedestrian safety in their downtown. Those types, and it doesn't have to be big. You know, Sandy Sansing's been doing a great job building early learning playgrounds in our housing projects in Pensacola. The Bear family have built a early learning. Josh Sitton has built an early learning playground. So it doesn't have to be big, but normally the communities that I see move have 4 to 5, in Lafayette, probably 10 or 11 people that get together. They're usually my age, somewhere in there. They've usually made money elsewhere, and they probably got so long to live, and they said, you know what, we're going to put that money into our community. It's very common. You just got to, there must be some people with money in Santa Rosa County somewhere. Right? That makes the difference. We'll be right with you. Go ahead. Why don't
in a community that's as diverse as Santa Rosa County, like obviously Navarre is different than Milton, than Gulf Breeze, when you've got so many different regional kind of cultural, communities, like that kind of diversity, how do you go about, I guess, do you survey its community? Do you?
You could. I don't know. You're an unusual county, is what I'm saying. So I don't know. But if I wasn't, here's how I feel. Like, what we did in Escambia County, my wife and I paid a company to come in and do economic development on how many homes were needed downtown. Walt, you were involved in that. How many condos, apartments, single-family homes. We hired the Weitzman Group, and we made it public because we hoped every developer wanted to be first to the market. And if I looked at Santa Rosa, if I was living in Gulf Breeze, I'd say I want us to be the vibrant place. If I was living in Milton, I'd say I want us to be the vibrant place. I think whoever gets going and does some cool stuff first will win, or they all win. If you go up to North Carolina, if anybody's been to North Carolina, they have Southern Pines here and they have Pinehurst here. And you think of going in one, and then you don't only go to one. You always sort of go to a few. So that's what you want. You want Santa Rosa, so people say, I'm going to spend half the day here, then half the day here, then at night I'm going to go to Navarre, or something like that.
Is there any low-hanging fruit you see that's, like, based on these results, something that we could start working on right now that would move the needle in the community?
I think you got to play small ball, but I certainly think messaging. I think messaging. You can message 3 things. If you want to keep, people, wow, we're safe. We got good schools and good education, good health care. The question is, which I don't have an answer, is I would maybe think about dipping into this college grads. So, for example, in Stillwater or Lafayette, one of them, a great example, one of the person was working an internship for one of the TV stations that covered a talk. And when we asked her what would keep her here, she immediately said, more stuff to do, more stuff to do. So I think you got to ask the people in those age range what they think.
How do people who have done this survey in other places, how do they use the results successfully versus other people who might kind of have these results and still stay stagnant?
The 2 best practices are Stillwater and Lafayette, and we're not. We're not. Escambia County and Pensacola is not. They are. They normally have a mixed group of citizens, and they really create their own little deal, and then they create a website, they create messaging, they create content. They do this. They brought Chuck Marone to Stillwater, Oklahoma. In Lafayette, they brought Dottie DeHart, who's a city messaging expert, to talk about how to message. So normally it's that collective mass of people that get together that really aren't part of, let's say, they might include the chamber, they might include other people, but it's really a collection of people that get together. And I can put you in contact with people in both those communities, everyone interested. They've really done a marvelous, really marvelous job.
Are there certain issues that stand out to you as something that where, as you mentioned, like one person with wealth can come in and really make a difference, and then there's probably other issues that kind of takes everyone pulling together? Like, are there certain issues that the whole community can kind of start working together on trying to improve that you see?
I don't know. What do you guys think? You know, you live here. Go ahead.
Well, you mentioned that the county's kind of split. And I thought, I'm on the city council of Milton, but I work with the county commissioners here, and they're from both areas, from the south end, and I always tried to build that relationship that just because we're split by a river, we need to look bigger and wider as a team. And by helping one's going to help the other, and that includes the whole area. You could stretch it from Pensacola to this whole northwest Florida corner. So that's been my philosophy in recent time, and it seems to be working. So.
Well, that's a good one. I just had that discussion 4 days ago with a guy. Okay? So, pardon? Okay, can I finish? Then I'll back up, get you. Okay. The question I always ask cities, and I'll ask this one, is are you willing to do what's better for all, even if it might not be better for you? And that's the rubber hits the road. So give me an example. Talking to a person selling some office buildings, okay? Got an offer from New York and an offer from Pensacola, in Pensacola, okay? Now, if he sells it to Pensacola, all of a sudden this person's going to have a lot of property he used to have, and there's a little ego with that. If he sells it to New York, it's sort of fun. It doesn't have that. So who would he rather sell it to? So I talked to the fellow, the realtor, and said, well, you know, this person might go for New York, but here's the example I always use. You're an architect. Any architects in here? Okay, let's say you're an architect, and somebody's coming into one of your cities here, and they're looking at, they bid on a project, and there's 2 local Santa Rosa architects, and then there's 2 out-of-town architects, not in Santa Rosa County. I make a decision, and I call the first Santa Rosa architect, and I say, we've chosen, you're not the one we're going to use. Now, does this architect immediately say, well, I understand, but I sure hope you choose the other architect from Santa Rosa County? Or do they hope they choose somebody in Atlanta because they see that other architect as their competitor? That's where the rubber hits the road. And unfortunately, in many communities, people don't have that. So the question, of course, in Santa Rosa is we hope it comes to Santa Rosa. We don't care where it is, just so it's in Santa Rosa. And I would say just so it's in Escambia or Santa Rosa, because you can't win by by dividing. And I think envy gets in the way. What if they get it and we don't, and so on. That in Escambia County, for a long time, economic development was everybody worrying about who gets credit for the jobs. We've come a long way now with the spring, but that's the question right there is, do you hope a competitor, even though they're a competitor, I'd rather get a local competitor get the deal than an out-of-town person get the deal, even though they'll be more successful possibly than me. So you were right. Becca?
I apologize. I didn't realize you were going to respond to his comments. So I appreciate the opportunity, and I appreciate you coming over the bridge. I am definitely somebody that sees Santa Rosa and Escambia as my home. I live more regional life, I think, with what I do and the way we live. But I was really interested because of the people I work with. You know, everybody that we serve at Food Raising Friends lives in poverty, and I was really shocked by the only 25% of people think this is a good place to live if you live in poverty. Well, there's a few reasons for that. One of them being we do kind of lack affordable housing. In general, we lack housing. You know, Santa Rosa County can't seem to keep up almost, even though we have so much being built that people can't afford to get into it. And I think that one of the things that shocked me on the survey was the level of educated people that we have in our county. Because we do have a wise county, we do have a high percentage of people that have a college education. We had like 17% that had finished grad school. But I'm really wondering if they work in Santa Rosa County. It seems to me that they would work in Escambia County because we don't have a lot of high-paying college-level positions. Was that information that was collected in this? Yeah. But they could be working in Escambia, yeah.
your poverty level scores aren't different than anybody. People in poverty generally feel like that. So it's not like, whoa, we've got more poor people than anyone. It's just basically people that are low income pretty much don't feel as good about the quality of life, don't feel good about housing, don't feel good about most stuff. Most stuff. So you're where everybody else is. But supply is a big issue. I mean, supply, and, the thing about anything is everything, if you take a medication, like right now I'm got this little deal going on, I'm on immunotherapy. Now, immunotherapies can save a life. It's for cancer. Now, but it's got side effects. Now, should I not take the immunotherapy because of side effects? Well, of course, that'd be crazy not to take the immunotherapy. And I'm not using that as probably the best example. What I'm saying is, even things that can be good and helpful can have a negative consequence. So, for example, when I go to communities that have no parking problem, they've also got no people. I tell that to people in Pensacola. They go, oh, I wish there was more of this. I said, well, we can go back and turn downtown to what it was 15 years ago. There was a lot of affordable housing in Pensacola, the downtown 15 years ago. So I tell cities, when you got challenges with things like traffic, it's probably a good thing. Not the best thing, but it's not the worst thing. It's one of those things you go up and down with. If you got challenge with supply of housing, it's because people want to live there. That's a positive thing. So there are certain things that I know sound negative, but they've got also a positive, just like a positive is a negative. Traffic usually means you got a lot of people who want to live in your area. Parking means you got a lot of people who want to be downtown. Those are the types of problems I'd rather have than the other problems is there's no one on roads and there's no one downtown. It's
from the big city to here, this is not traffic.
yeah. When it's what you get used to. I moved from Gulf Breeze from Chicago, and I drove 52 minutes each way. And the first couple of months I thought this is great. About the third month I'm going, my God, look at that bridge, for crying out loud. Yeah. Now, the other day I was at Main Street in Pensacola, and at the stoplight I was in front of the stadium, and I'm thinking, my gosh, look at that traffic. And I timed it, and it was like 4 minutes, but it seemed like 4 hours. So it's what you get used to. Hey, any other things on there?
Just going to ask, like, one question that we got repeatedly was just kind of about building vibrancy kind of in downtown in Milton, and I know it's probably a different animal everywhere, but any advice about building a vibrant community to kind of address some of those issues about nightlife? And
You got to slow traffic down. You can't have, and I'm not saying, I think there's a possible road issue in Milton, if I remember right. I think I wrote a letter about it 4 years ago. But I'll say this to Odessa. I've said it to Janesville. I've said it to every city I've ever gone into. You've got to slow traffic downtown. And if you can't slow down traffic, it's hard to have a vibrant community. I don't even like median strips. I think they split up a street. And do you realize, in talking about Pensacola, that if you ever been to Blue Wahoo Stadium, we got that median strip? People fly down those roads. Yet you don't want to bike and walk. You could move the median strip to the side. People would drive slower because there's not that median strip. And you'd have a protected bicycle and walking lane for the same amount of money, the same amount of cement. But you got to look at things differently. So if you want Milton to be vibrant, you've got to have slow traffic, and you've got to have where people can shop and walk on both sides of the street. Because when I hired Ray Gindros, my wife was just in a magazine recently, and we joke because she's not into publicity. So she got on the front cover of a magazine. I said, there you go again. There you go. And she hates all that stuff. But we hired Ray Gindros, and he's coming to Civicon this year. He was in Pittsburgh that helped Pittsburgh. We brought him in about 2006 or 7, and him and I drove around downtown Pensacola. And he said, if you want a vibrant downtown, you got to create a great corner, a great intersection. He says, every great community has a great intersection. So right away, I was thinking, well, where could our great intersection be? And I thought it would be at Garden and Palafox, if you're familiar. You got the Vinyl there, and you got the P&J now. You've got a courthouse there. You got Kennedy Bar there. Now, none of, they weren't there, but he said no, because you got that median strip, and you got those 4 lanes. I said, where could it be then? He said, the corner of Palafox and Main. Now, I said, come on now. It was 2 vacant buildings and 2 empty lots. He said, but this is where traffic slows down. So I would say, find your corner, and then find your intersection, and build out from there. And I give this advice to any community. Some of them have challenges. Odessa, Texas is a perfect example. They've got a main state drag going right through their downtown. And they're going to have to move their downtown over. Because they're actually, right now, that family I talked about built a Marriott hotel 1 block off downtown. They built a Starbucks, a taco, because they're trying to get the traffic. 4 lanes going through their downtown is never going to create the shopping on both sides. Janesville, Wisconsin, one-way streets. That's another thing that doesn't help it downtown, because the traffic flies, can't go 2 ways. My wife and I bought some property downtown and put in bodacious shops, and we know Janesville well, and we basically said, we won't invest this money if it's still one-way traffic. And now it's 2-way traffic. So you got to look at things like that. So you've got to slow down traffic, find your corner, and then you can't do a lot, because if you look at Pensacola, it's been 10 or 12 years, but we started with that corner, then you go another block, then another block, and then they call it, I've learned all this, thickening. Once your street gets so busy that the rents get high enough, then you go a block over. You go a block over. That's all healthy for a city. So now you have where the Southtown apartments are on this side, you're getting a little bit on this side. It's small ball. It's small ball. It's a whole bunch of little things, and then one day you're exhausted, you're tired, and somebody says, well, it's gotten a lot better here, gotten a lot better here. Well, thank you very much for allowing me to be here with you today. I appreciate it.
And before you all head out, I would just ask, there is a survey you can take. I think they're on your seats, or if not, they're at the table on the way out. And basically everything we do, we try to measure, as Quinn said. So we ask kind of what topics do you want to learn more about? What speakers do you want in town? What issues are not being addressed in the community? And we take that feedback, and that's how we book speakers and, address our focuses.
And it'll be on the P&J website?
Oh, yes, this data will be on the P&J website if you want to come in and take a deeper dive. And that's it. So thank y'all, everybody. Thank you so much for coming out. Appreciate it.